approach to TV is an audience first approach, which means that we don't necessarily look at linear, addressable, connected TV. We're really looking at our audience and where our audience is consuming media. Once we understand that, then we can have a solid strategy to make sure that we're having the right message to them and that we're able to communicate that enough times without communicating it too many times.
So what about the new opportunities with CTV? There's so much happening now. There's many opportunities, many ad supported opportunities. How do you see those?
Yeah, I think the landscape is changing so quickly right now for TV. When we look at it, we're really trying to understand how do people want to consume media? Where do people want to consume media? And then how do we show up in that place, but show up in an interesting and unique way? And I think that a lot of the new streaming services that are coming out, even just a lot of the new behavior, like we're looking at gaming, we're looking at some of these other trends that have really come up over the past year. How do we then insert ourselves in a way that's meaningful and not disruptive in those different places? So, I think where we used to start looking at our media plan and saying, here's what our linear plan is, and then how do we fill in with some of these other mediums? We're now saying, where is our audience? How do we really have that be the crux of our strategy? And then sort of fill in and let linear be our inspiration point and a more of a tentpole strategy and an entree into the brand rather than where we're really trying to do a lot of the work.
So what are some unique opportunities with CTV, with connected TV around ad load, around creative, around frequency capping? What are some of the promises that you're excited about?
One of the big things that I think that we as an industry really need to do is to redefine reach and frequency. Right now, we go out and we say we're probably hitting 80% of our audience 2 to 3 times, right? That's our reach and frequency. When we start with an audience, what we can really start to understand is number one, who is this person? Where are they in the shopping process? What are their interests? And then we can start to have a much better conversation with them. So instead of just saying, I have this one message and I hit this target probably 2 to 3 times, I can start to have a much better conversation of if you're not in market, I'm starting to introduce you to the Cadillac brand, create some desire that's longer term, and hopefully start to do some things that are a little bit more interesting. And then as you start to get closer to being in market, we can start to give you information that you're going to need as a shopper. What are some deeper product features? What are the offers that are in market? Um, and we can then start to have this conversation in a way of we will know we communicated to you on these 3 platforms, and then you purchased or not. And so it becomes this closed loop ecosystem, and it really allows us to have advertising in a way that is more what consumers want when they're looking at advertising. Because we always talk about how consumers don't like ads, they're disruptive. I think we have the perfect example this past weekend of the fact that consumers do love advertising, and that's the Super Bowl. GM had 2 spots within there. One of them was a Cadillac spot for Edward Scissorhands. The GM Will Ferrell No Way Norway spot were both there, and people are loving those ads. So when we can have advertising come in a way that is entertaining, is the message that someone wants at the right time, and we're not over serving them, then advertising can actually, as you're saying, help enable some of these platforms that consumers want to engage in at a better cost.
So what about measurement? It's so different, right, than the traditional sources that you've used, that the linear TV has used. How have your demands for measurement changed? And specifically, I know you're working with Samsung Measurement. How does that fit into an overall strategy?
So I think when you look at what our demand for measurement is, that's actually probably the same as it's been. We want to understand which consumers we're reaching when and which things are having a positive impact on the shopping process as we go through. Um, there are complexities and intricacies that come up with this new ecosystem. Um, because one of the biggest challenges we have is how do you understand what's happening across linear and connected TV as you start to layer in OTT, addressable, all of these different things. It's harder and harder to understand when and how you're reaching your audience. And before, when that was between TV and digital, those are different experiences. From a consumer perspective, now, whether you're consuming and seeing a commercial on connected or addressable TV, or you're seeing that on linear TV, it doesn't really matter to you. So the challenge that we have now is how do we understand that? The beauty that some of these new platforms are bringing is that we can actually start to understand what messages are being reached to consumers and how they're reacting. And that's where Samsung came in. They really helped us in this pilot that we ran, help us understand across linear and OTT or connected TV how often people were seeing our advertisements. In doing so, and then helping us do a sales match, we can start to understand actually what is the ideal frequency. Does exposure to an ad actually help someone purchase something? And do multiple exposures help more? And Samsung actually, in this pilot, helped us start to open the door on that. And it's giving us some hope to keep moving forward and try to keep pushing on what we can really get out of our partnership with Samsung as we dig into measurement overall, which continues to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have in the advertising industry.